We begin, though, with new developments out of the Middle East. Israel's military says it has conducted a precise strike targeting senior members of Hamas leadership in the Qatari capital of Doha. Now, this is the first time Israel has struck inside Qatar, which has been hosting the majority of these ceasefire talks. Hamas says 5 of its members were killed, including the son of the group's exiled Gaza chief. The Qatari Foreign Ministry is condemning the attack, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended the strike, saying he believes it may finally pave the way toward lasting peace.
Israel acted wholly independently, and we take full responsibility for this action. And this action can open the door to an end of the war. Israel has accepted the proposal put forward by President Trump to end the war, beginning with the immediate release of all our hostages, which have been held in the dungeons of Gaza for 700 days.
At today's press briefing, the White House did confirm the United States was alerted to the attack as it unfolded.
This morning, the Trump administration was notified by the United States military that as Israel was attacking Hamas, which very unfortunately was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar. Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals.
And CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio has more from London.
Explosions rocked the Qatari capital of Doha, sending smoke into the sky and tensions even higher. Israel launched a strike targeting senior Hamas leaders in the city as they were reportedly discussing a U.S.-backed ceasefire proposal for Gaza at the chief negotiator's house.
Israel acted wholly independently, and we take full responsibility for this action.
The attack marks a dramatic escalation in Israel's campaign, and there's worry it could derail ongoing negotiations to end the war and free Israeli hostages.
All parties must work towards achieving a permanent ceasefire, not destroying it.
In Gaza, Israel has leveled high-rise after high-rise. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his forces have knocked down at least 50 terror towers in their bid to destroy Hamas. Israel delivered a warning today, dropping leaflets from the skies, ordering everyone to get out now. These demolitions are part of Israel's intensifying offensive to take control of what they say is Hamas's last stronghold. And Israel's bombing of Gaza City continues. The UN now says that many families can't even evacuate, even if they wanted to. This is because of overcrowding along with cost. In Gaza City, the Hamas-run civil defense says search and rescue is happening right now with people alive under that rubble. Ramy Inocencio, CBS News, London.
And for more, let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro. Aaron, thanks so much for joining us today. As we heard there, the Trump administration was informed about these strikes as they were happening. What more do we know?
Yeah, Nancy, we're still putting together the timeline and details on this. But from what we learned from the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, is that the U.S. military learned about this attack before it happened, informed President Trump and the administration, and that President Trump then directed a special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, to alert the Qataris that this attack was coming. We do not know for sure if the U.S. military was informed by the Israelis about this attack or if they learned about it through other measures. And in that statement from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, I thought it was really notable how she said that strikes on Qatar, a close ally of the United States that is working with them in an intermediary sense to try and end the war between Israel and Hamas, that attacking them does not advance Israel's or U.S. goals. We also learned that after the attack, President Trump did talk to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but all that Caroline Leavitt would reveal about that is that the Prime Minister told President Trump that he wants peace quickly, and that President Trump said he believes that this, quote, unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace.
Aaron, I was going to ask you about that. As you mentioned, this very close relationship between the United States and Qatar, especially when it comes to ending the war in Gaza. What happens to that relationship now?
Yeah, it's something to watch. We learned that President Trump, in addition to calling Netanyahu, also talked to the president or the emir and prime minister of Qatar after the attack. And from Caroline Levitt, she said that Trump assured them that it would not happen again. An attack on their soil would not happen again, though she did not give details on what exactly that means. She also said that the president overall views Qatar still as a strong ally of the United States and feels, quote, very badly about the location of this attack. That was something that they focused on during this press briefing at the White House, the location in the capital of Doha, though they did say that eliminating Hamas is, quote, a worthy goal of Israel.
And Aaron, I want to ask you also now about the Epstein files, just to turn to a different topic here, in that drawing that's been getting so much attention last night, or I should say actually yesterday afternoon. The House Oversight Committee released that message, the birthday message from 2003 to the convicted sex offender, apparently signed by President Trump. A lot of back and forth on that. But what more do we know about the letter today and the president's reaction?
Yeah, we saw in a phone interview with NBC that President Trump believes that this Epstein news is, quote, a dead story. And what we heard from White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt is continued denials that President Trump drew this letter that you're seeing on the screen or signed it, and that she would welcome a professional handwriting expert to do a review of the documents that were released yesterday. They also noted that they have an ongoing lawsuit of $10 billion towards News Corp, which owns the Wall Street Journal, which first reported on this letter in July, and that they will continue to pursue legal action.
All right, Aaron Navarro, thanks so much for being with us. We always appreciate it.